Brenda!
Brenda! Yeah, baby.
Hi.
Hi.
Got it?
This is for Allison, 24 years of friendship. So the only thing that, this is an excerpt from my novel. The only thing that I think you really need to know is that it takes place in Washington Territory in 1874. Our people still love these somber solitudes, and at evening tide they grow shadowy of returning spirits. These shores will swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe, and when your children's children think themselves alone in the silence of the pathless woods, they will not be alone. Be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not powerless. Dead, say I? There is no death. Only a change of worlds. Chief Seattle, 1854. Cyrus was fishing when he heard the stick man call to him. He stood thigh deep in the river, casting his line out, when a whistle too high in pitch to be a bird caught his attention. The sound was long, clear, and steady, and seemed to come from just beyond the trees to his left. He tried to ignore it at first. He'd promised his mother he'd bring home some salmon, and he wasn't having any luck thus far. The sun would be setting soon, and he didn't want to walk home in the dark. Cyrus wasn't afraid of the shadows. At least, that's what he would tell anybody if they asked. But he wasn't fool enough to wander around in the forest after the sunset either. The whistle came again, this time from the trees on his right. It startled him enough to pull his line in and wade back to the bank, fish or no fish. Whatever was making that noise moved quickly, and he wasn't going to chance it coming after him. If he walked a little more quickly than usual along the well-worn trail, it was only because the wind was chilly and his pants were wet from wading in the water. It had nothing to do with the whistling that was coming first from behind and then from in front of him. It was the wind, that was all. Or maybe some sort of bird he'd never heard before. Cyrus tried to comfort himself with all the reasonable ideas he could come up with, and it almost worked, until the whistling turned to laughter. Mirth like that was a purely human sound. At first, Cyrus was relieved by the revelation. He could deal with people. There wasn't anyone nearby he didn't know save the Indians, and he wasn't afraid of them. They mostly kept to themselves, except for the few who had mastered enough English to trade with the settlers, and they never paid him any attention. The laughter was coming from behind him. Cyrus turned around quickly, expecting to see people following him up the trail, but it was empty and quiet. Confused, he picked up his pace and continued walking. Several minutes passed, and he began to think that he'd been imagining everything. His thoughts turned to what he would tell his mother to distract her from the fact that he was returning home empty-handed. He hoped his father had more luck with his hunt, or else the family would be dining on vegetable stew. It was perfectly filling, but Cyrus hated it. The laughter moved. No longer behind him, it now came from a group of tall ferns growing off the side of the path, 15 feet ahead of him. He was close enough to home that it easily could have been Grace and a couple of her friends, but it sounded like there were at least 5 people. How they managed to move from behind him to their current hiding spot so quickly he couldn't figure. His chest felt tight, as though his jacket and vest were too small. He started to turn around and look at the spot he thought they'd been hiding in a moment before, but the movement caused his vision to blur, and his head felt too big for his neck. A floating sensation came over him, as though his head had detached itself from the rest of his body and hovered above it, somehow connected, but rolling around of its own volition. It made him nauseated, and he decided it was best to just focus on the path ahead and get home without falling. The ferns rustled as though someone was about to walk through them, but no one came forward. "Grace, stop it!" I'm not in the mood for your stupid games. I don't feel well, Cyrus said. He tried to sound more annoyed than scared, but he knew his attempt was falling flat. Curious physical sensations were unlike anything he'd experienced before. He tried to move on, but his steps were unsteady, and soon he found himself leaning against a rotted-out stump, waiting for the feeling to pass. Next to him was a thin tree. It didn't look like all the other cedars nearby. Cyrus thought the way it looked rather mimicked the way he felt. The bark was peeling in places and discolored, a strange mix of red and yellow. It too looked ill. Cyrus bent his head and closed his eyes, trying to will his stomach to stay put long enough for him to make it home. He no longer cared about the vegetable stew waiting for him. He just wanted to go to bed. After a few deep breaths, he opened his eyes, intending to continue his trek home. Upon raising his head, he saw he was no longer alone. He was looking into the deep black maw of one of the stick people. The tree that was not a tree was poised to swallow him whole. The mouth above him was darker than the deepest night, and the putrid state of decaying flesh and desperation fell warm on his face. Too afraid to move out of the way, Cyrus screamed. An exhale of hell in 1 second turned into two before the mouth abruptly shut. Cyrus fell silent. His terror ran down his leg and seeped through the fabric of his trousers. How could he explain such a thing to his mother? She would never believe him. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes, threatening to fall. The stick man had drawn back at the sound of his scream. The tree that was not a tree turned out to be a tall, gaunt man with stringy black hair. And had he been looking, Cyrus would see razor-sharp fingernails curled into claws. He wore a strange buckskin suit that was torn in places. His eyes were as black as his teeth, and he stared at Cyrus in perfect silence, regarding him with something akin to familiarity. The nausea receded, and his vision returned to normal. Transfixed, Cyrus was aware that this was somehow the working of the stick man. Without exchanging any speech, Cyrus felt that he was safe. The stick man recognized him. He would not hurt him. Someone else had screamed that way before. Someone the stick man knew. It was someone that it also hadn't eaten, despite the hunger that ravaged it and turned it into the monster it now was. One does not eat one's own. One may eat others to survive, but not those who belong. Cyrus stared back, terrified of the truths he was seeing in those dark eyes. He couldn't move, couldn't look away. The world this creature came from was so utterly alien to him, and yet strangely, inexplicably familiar. Hunting others is a means of survival. It's normal. It's what we do. Cyrus understood that this was a message the stick man was relaying to him. He, Cyrus, was one of them. He didn't understand the why or how of it, but it was as if the thing in front of him had gifted him with a piece of his soul he hadn't known he missed. He belonged. Finally. He blinked. In front of him stood an older, ordinary tree with scruffy bark, long past its prime. The stick man was gone. He looked down and noticed his pants were dry. Perhaps he'd imagined the whole thing. Cyrus laid his hand upon the trunk. It was warm, pulsing with life. The moment passed and he walked on, suddenly ravenous for vegetable stew.
Yeah!
Good literature makes you dizzy. It just does.
Everything makes me dizzy.
Well, I I guess I should have looked at who comes next.
Mojo Mama.
Morris?
Mojo.
Say it again.
Mojo Mama.
Say it again.
Mojo Mama.
Everybody
We're
needs to
losing
say
our
it.
Mojo Mama.
Mojo Mama!
Hello, everybody. My manuscript is entitled "Mojo Mama Says Yes." Who would have ever thought I was going to write a book that was something about me? But when I looked at it all put together, I said I got to call it "Mojo Mama Says Yes." So I've decided tonight to read 3 poems, one short, 2 long. I'm reading the first poem, a poem from the middle, and the final poem in my manuscript. Revival. Arise from worms and dirt, from rotted leaves, after this gravid, soaking rain, and dance. Bare feet amid the violet ruffs and vines fresh strung with purple peas, inhale the scented cherry branch. Roll in drifting petals on newly sprouted green, adorning skin with pollen's gold. Find the shoots of phlox and sniff the richest jasmine sweets. Turn the earth, sowing countless seeds. Sing your dawn's devotions while perched atop a myrtle bough. A rosy finch duos along, note for note, and praise for praise. My manuscript has a number of threads running through it. There's stories about my mother, and there's stories about my work, which I spent 20 years as a nurse practitioner in HIV care. I just retired recently, and this is a poem about the patient that taught me the most. As far as heart goes. I remember the day she came to us 6 months ago from working on the house she bought her son. Curls flaked with drywall dust. Her once tiny arms grown robust and splattered with night glow paint. Now she has a fungus in her heart. An aspergillus eats her cardigan. And we've got no cure or new meds for her AIDS. Ignoring how her heart won't last for long, she stands defiant, glares and turns away, focusing her will and all the heart she has on living for Jamal. Too soon, Jamal will notice that her cough turns her cocoa face to pale dust, and then he's sent to stay at Auntie's house. He chooses inspiration over sleep, shining his flashlight under quilts, warmed by God's dazzling creation. Noah saving animals in pairs, Jacob climbing like Mom when she painted glowing stars above his bed. He sounds the fable's letters aloud, quiet as praying, fingers tracing words like spells for parting seas, a talking bush, small David's courage, and honeyed bread falling from desert skies to feed the lost.
Yay!
As doctors pushed in tubes to open my lungs and give me breath, I surrendered to the arms of New Hope's gospel songs, drifting in time and space, thinking of Jamal, I wandered, traveling far from this place. Then saw Jamal's young dad, years lost to AIDS, saw him clapping and responding to the choir. I saw the radiance you hear near death inspires. He waved me over to a glade. I spun him pictures of our son's bright mind while we rested near a clear green river. He told me it sure seemed I'd raised him right, but sent me back. You got no time to linger. When they take her off the vent, her hospital team calls, pleading I'll talk her into hospice because she trusts me. I wind the twisting halls, too serpentine for comfort. I find her slumped, rubbing her throat. But when I enter, she straightens and points like the Queen of Sheba to the wall, rasping, "You out!" with all the force of her faith, knowing I won't visit unless a death is near. Intent to keep her promise to her son, she shakes her head to make it clear. Be gone. Don't think that you're some Solomon. When she resurrects, to all our awe, and they pronounce her fit enough to leave, she picks Jamal up from school, grouts tile, paints the hall, and teaches him to read. Under the starry ceiling she stenciled, she tells him God, who made this world, promised she'd live till Jamal could manage without her. And one day they would meet again. She lasts till spring, when doctors attempt to resurrect her once again, but none has strength to mend her warrior's heart. And this is my last poem. It's the title poem. It's called Mojo Mama Says Yes. Woo! And it's after Ross Gay. Friends, will you hear me today? For I have awakened, seeing the world new made, my mind having space for noticing, and attention being a type of praise. Let me tell you, I am praising this daily release of quiet earth bursting. I've risen from injury, pelvis broken, chair confined, weeping as the hickories grew golden, the skies became steel, and the winds turned skin to a cold burning. Awakened, studying a cherry tree. And I am here to say I witnessed it, from a single burst of flower to a wild temple of pink, white, marshmallow blooms. And yes, meantime, our human nature turned much meaner. And the TV and cyber news feed were littered with hate talk and unspeakable evils, and our planet saw floods, quakes, and disease. Yet, for 7 days I praised the cherry's beauty, till the wind covered me in pale chiffon blizzard, saying yes, yes forever to the wild, abundant flourish of my backyard square. Yes to the faux pond formed by invasive spiderwort, underground root fingers spreading like my mother's tumors, dark blue insatiable flowers making an oval of indigo green. Yes, Mom laughed with me, imagining waters teeming with frogs and golden minnows under our cedar tree, split by lightning in '93, its twinned trunk still thriving. I must say yes to yellow jasmine, tender and tenacious, winding into the spaces between the siding, making a lemon-tipped journey into the heart of our bedroom, draping its gold on the amethyst paint. And yes, to amaryllises laid down in soil, sifted by my lover's hands, their fat bulbs and white roots spread wide, rising as snakeheads and opening to labial blossoms. I cry a resounding yes to a world thriving, remembering a drive through a veil of wisteria into a district condemned for a freeway, to change a patient's dressings, in a house she bought herself, saving pennies doing other people's work, where irises and fragrant vines grew wild. Did she dream her perfumed honeysuckle would one day overpower her laid wounds weeping? Sugar blind, lamenting, the only path back home I know is the one scented by beauty. I am here to tell you, friends, I've worked at Nurture, mothering the sorrowful, leading travelers through grief, taking aim at shadows, giving balm. But I have put that aside for now. Put that aside to sing survivor praises. Yes, to the sister who transformed her diagnosis of incurable disease by building a straw bale house, mudded with her own hands, stuccoing 3 stories with red clay, mud, and sand. Yes, to the octogenarian who fought off cancer and HIV, showing me how she danced for her birthday, doing a shimmy, heels under her knees. And yes, to creations, arrays of blossoms and beings, like the tall trans designer who stitches gowns of iridized beads. All of us awakening. After a knockdown, a long week, a winter, walking the river, swallowtails making whoopee along its shoals, rising from soft dank with their crisp stained glass wings. We turn a bend to see brown water flowing through white spider lily clumps, full bloom islets between racing rivulets, like the suicide witness who found free flowing tears contained the blossoming her survival needs. Thank you.
Bringing the heat. Before we do our last reader, I just wanted to get a round of applause for Anna Marie, who's been selling books for us. And Ophelia. At the other reading, I emptied my coconut water. This is the kind of Californian I've become. I'm drinking coconut water in Nevada. She knows that I'm not a drinker, and I go, oh, lemonade, and I start pouring the lemonade in. She goes, no, margarita! And so she saved my sobriety. Thank you very much. Suzanne Simon.
Stand one more poet. So these poems tonight are from my thesis collection entitled At Dusk, which we're almost there. Between August and September, In this 5th season, earth stills her mantle to the core. Lush heat drips off wood ducks on a spellbound pond. Male plumage fades with ducklings last down. Beauty spreads from the margins. This brief, languid season calms. Land pensive, we mellow with sun and leisure. Stars streak across Pegasus, guiding flocks of terns drifting southward, more silent than usual. Strands of morning breathe gold. Each year a false certainty of summer lingers, while we deny the chill before dawn. Hammocked between tending and harvesting, this is no time for beginnings, the old Bedouin knew. Rather, extinguish endless flames of seeking. I will not start a new chapter. Apply for promotion. Seek out a partner. Simple patience, wrapped in a cloak.